if you are not expanding, you're in a state of dying. And so if you look at the universe is creating new galaxies, new stars, new planets every single moment of every day. And we are constantly in a state of expanding. And if we are not expanding in every single area of our life, that portion of our life is in decay. It is dying.
Being aware and having the tools enabled me to not only move through it, but to use it to teach, because now I'm responsible for a lot more people. And I realized, like, if I'm going through this, other people are going through this. So now how can I turn around and support my team when they're elevated and they're given more and they start to feel like they're crumbling under the stress and the pressure?
Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Anniston, and this is Empowered Life.
Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. I am Rudi Rixteens, and this is Anniston Blair Rixteens. And today we want to bring a topic to you that, I come up against in business. I spend the majority of my time coaching high-performing individuals inside of organizations and supporting people to achieve their highest and their greatest potential. And inevitably, every single person has a dream or a goal or desire to do, be, or have. We talk about that a lot. But there's a process of, setting a goal to have something and then taking the work to be able to get it and then waiting for the period for it to align. And we go through an entire emotional journey as we go through setting a goal and then working towards achieving that goal. And sometimes people say to me, I want to do something or I want to have something, but I already have so much. And I feel like maybe I'm just being greedy, or when is enough enough, or why am I never satisfied? And I want to touch on something for a second. And this episode is really about talking about all aspects of expansion. Expansion is happening everywhere at all times. In fact, in science, it says if you are not expanding, you're in a state of dying. And so if you look at the universe is creating new galaxies, new stars, new planets every single moment of every day. And we are constantly in a state of expanding. And if we are not expanding in every single area of our life, that portion of our life is in decay. It is dying. And so we need to expand. We need to want more. We need to grow, and we need to set goals, and we need to have these dreams or goals or desires to be able to do something. We've spoken about on the podcast in previous episodes, Anniston needs to have a trip that she's planning at all times. And that is a beautiful part of a process, because she's saying we're going on this trip, but she's already thinking of what's the next trip. She's already planning and researching and studying. And so when this trip ends, she's automatically now in the excitement of creating the next trip. And that's a form of expansion. The same thing applies in work and in life and in business. But in the very beginning of this episode, we want to bring your awareness to the fact that you need to look at all areas of your life. And in every single area of your life, you need to be moving towards a goal. You need to be expanding. You need to have the next level. Anniston and I have a phenomenal relationship, and I'm always wanting to improve our relationship. I want it to be expanding, because I understand if we're not expanding, then it's in the process of decaying.
In our last episode, I'm not sure if you caught it. If you didn't, I highly recommend you go back. But we spoke around this idea that life is a pendulum. And sometimes there are the highs where things are happening and you're reaching those penultimate goals that you've set for yourself. And things are externally buzzing and you feel really good. And then there's the other side of the pendulum where, it feels like there's problems, there's challenges. And then there's the middle of the pendulum, which is what we really spent a lot of time talking about. And this is the stillness, the part of the pendulum where you're in a phase of life where you feel like you're not moving forward, you're feeling stuck. And we spoke a lot about how do you prepare yourself for that, so you know how to support yourself through it, so you can reframe, reperceive, and find the good in that part. And what we're talking about today is, okay, so then what happens when the pendulum goes back to the other side? You've reached a goal. And today we'll be centering it more around your career, but this could be taken in any area of your life. So So let's say in your career, you have been working hard towards a promotion. We speak a lot, and a lot of teachers and coaches speak a lot into the journey to your goal, right? The things that you have to do, the limiting beliefs that you have to overcome, the commitment you have to make to taking forward movement, getting out of your comfort zone, all of these things. And I feel like it's a much more common conversation to have in how do you reach your goal? What I find to be less common is what happens when you do.
I was brought into a company in the beginning of the year, and they had just achieved their highest revenue growth that they'd ever experienced in the history of the company. And it's a really long-standing organization. And the numbers were so phenomenal, so astounding that, they were celebrating this incredible achievement. But in speaking with the team, there was a lot of fear around how do we do this next year? And even on the initial introductory calls about what am I going to talk about coming into the company, they were already saying, oh, but this is happening in the market, that, our competitors are doing this, and this person's doing that, and these people are in our backyard. And the terminology was fear-driven and fear-based. And it's not a criticism, it's a part of the successful journey of expansion. And so there is a journey into success. We first have to be on the one side of the pendulum where we're the underdog and something's not working and we want to create a shift or a change. That feeling of we need to create a shift or a change creates the uncomfortableness that becomes so unbearable that we do something different so we can get a different result. We swing into the other end of the spectrum where now all of a sudden we're taking action and then we achieve the goal and we've got it. And then all of a sudden that pendulum starts to swing back. And so as it starts to swing back, we interpret that emotional swing as fear. And on the other side of success is fear. And I actually bring this topic into companies because, when we're the underdog, we've got this mentality of like, we have absolutely nothing to lose. We are expanding, we are creating, and we're going to throw everything at it. And then there's this energy that goes into it. And then when you achieve it, it's now, oh my gosh, you're no longer the underdog. Now you're the dog. And what if you're no longer the dog? What if you lose it? What if it starts to slip? What if somebody else comes in and takes something from you? And then the focus goes from let's move the ball down the field to let's protect the ball. And that is an incredible analogy because so many people are playing to win. And then when they're winning, they start playing not to lose. And the focus goes from winning to losing.
A few months ago, I received an unexpected call, and this call brought an opportunity. And as I said, it was completely unexpected. I had just come off of a few weeks of really feeling kind of unsure what was going on, not really sure what the next step was, but I could feel something was coming. I felt like there was a shift, there was a change, but nothing had appeared in my external reality to validate that. So I was in a really good place and enjoying having a little bit more space in my mind and in my time. So I get this call from my boss and she says, we have an opportunity for you. And one that we would really like for you to consider. We want you to retain your current position as Vice President of Cruise Operations, but we would also like for you to take on an advisory role in our sister company as an SVP of Revenue. And my initial thought was, whoa. I was like, I know I can stretch myself. I know that I'm capable of doing a lot. But this felt like a lot. Like I wouldn't just need to expand my plate. I would need a whole other plate. And so my initial feelings were those of fear, of doubt. So I asked if I could have a couple of days to make the decision. And I spent that weekend in deep thought and introspection of what is this opportunity to me? And is it for me? And the fact that it came out of nowhere generally to me usually means it's for me, especially something I'm not seeking out. But then I started asking, but why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling nervous and afraid and anxious? And so I do what I do, and I got out my journal and I started asking myself questions and just free writing. And what I found was that, I was worried I would fail. What if I fail? And what would that mean about me? But then when I got down to the crux of what this opportunity really held, I realized that I had been asking for more. I had been silently asking for a bigger challenge, been asking for growth, been asking for expansion. And more than that, I had been asking to increase my ability to impact people. And this opportunity, even though I had no clue it would come in this form, was the direct response to that.
You know, the beauty of this story, and I don't want anyone to miss it, is if you listen to the last episode, Anniston had shared that I was moving forward in my life and in my business. I had had the busiest November, the busiest December, the craziest January, just insane travel, stages all over the world, really busy, in and out of companies. I was living my purpose. And it shone a light on her, who is also in this moment living her purpose. But she felt like, wow, everything's the same for me. Nothing's changing. And I also want to grow. I also want to expand. And so this is where the guilt comes in, where it's like, but I have everything that's so great, but I'm not happy with where I'm at. And then she started questioning, well, what does it feel like where I'm at? And what do I want? And so when we spoke about it, she said, I just want to impact more people. I also want to move forward. I also want to have a bigger reach. And that's when I asked her, so do you want to leave your job? Because I was so surprised because she loves her job. And she said, no, I don't want to leave my job. I just want to impact more people. And then she got comfortable being in that space while she was waiting for it to come. And then the phone rang and an opportunity was presented to her that she hadn't thought of before. And she said, oh, it came to me and I wasn't creating this, except it is exactly what she created. She just didn't know this is the form that it was going to take. And so she said, I want more people. And so now she's supporting and running an entire another company who has an entire workforce with an entire group of people that she gets to coach and mentor and support and pour into and love into and share her zone of genius in. And so her plate expanded. But in the asking, the waiting, and then the receiving, you go through the shift of the pendulum and you go through the emotional shifts. And she went from wanting, being in the uncomfortable, difficult place, to becoming comfortable in the pause. And now there's the fear. Now I've got something to lose.
Something to lose and something I've never done before. And I think, and this is where what I had said earlier about this is the part of the conversation that I don't think happens enough. And I'm so grateful that I'm just coming through this experience and that I can turn around and share it with you, because I know so many people who go through this. You receive an elevation and it's great and you're excited and it's scary, but it's validating and you feel really good. And you've got this brand new title and all of a sudden you've got these direct reports and then the reality sets in and you start to move into doing things you've never done before, being responsible for people you've never been responsible for, having to potentially up-level your skills and abilities so that you can do the job, the bigger job that you've just been given. So you're thrown out of your comfort zone. You're tossed out, right? Where you were comfortable before and you were confident and capable before, shining so bright that someone wanted to offer you promotion. All of a sudden you wake up and you think, where did my confidence go? Where did my assuredness go of my capability? And why do I feel like I'm an imposter? Why do I feel like I'm not qualified all of a sudden? I thought for sure I was qualified for this position, but now I'm in it. And what if I fail? And I started to go through all of those feelings. I would wake up with this, this uneasy level of anxiety. And I'm not one who suffers from anxiety because I address it very quickly. And I know how to adjust my emotional and mental state to do so. But I was so cognizantly aware. I felt like I was almost an observer of this process. And I was being really vocal and talking to Rudi about it throughout the journey and saying, oh my gosh, like I feel so stressed, or I feel so, my calendar went from being busy to being completely double booked and overloaded. My plate had grown so considerably that I realized I'm going to have to create some changes within me in order to hold the expanded capacity of this plate, because who I was before, managing what I was managing, isn't going to be sufficient for what I now have to manage. And that starts here. And that starts with me doing what I know works, which is waking up in the morning, priming my day, setting my intention, journaling. I started journaling and unearthing limiting beliefs that were popping up from years ago that I thought that I had completely taken care of. They were firing back like thoughts I hadn't had about myself in so long. And again, I was being an observer of the process and thinking, wow, this is my brain's response to being outside of my comfort zone. It's warning me, saying, Mayday, 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 this could be dangerous. Mayday, 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 you might not like how this is going to feel when this goes wrong. I was thinking of all the worst scenarios. But being aware and having the tools enabled me to not only move through it, but to use it to teach, because now I'm responsible for a lot more people. And I realized, like, if I'm going through this, other people are going through this. So now how can I turn around and support my team when they're elevated and they're given more and they start to feel like they're crumbling under the stress and the pressure?
People want growth and they want expansion. And so there's the part of you that says, I want more. And you birth the seed of, I want something new, I want something different. In Anniston's case, I want to create a bigger impact. And then you get that thing that you've created. And then all of a sudden the fear comes in because you're doing something you've never done. And so you have something that you could now lose and you don't know how it's going to go because you've never done it before. And so you have heightened senses. Your brain is saying to you, hey, just be alert. You're doing something new. You're doing something different. We're learning something new. We're doing something that we haven't done before. So it's not automated. And we process that with fear. We process that as, oh no, what if we're going to lose? And so there's two ways that you can travel this path. You can do it the hard, the difficult way, where you're focusing on the fear, you're focusing on what you could lose. Anniston is beautifully articulating the emotional swing that she had. And she's a very emotionally grounded person, but she almost didn't take this job because there was the fear of, what if it's too much? What, my plate's already so full. And then there was the fear of, what if I do it and I fail? What if it's not successful? And then there was the fear of, what if I don't do it? And, you've got to decide which one of those are you going to lean into. And we're growth expanders. And so we want to expand. We want to grow. We want to be in the uncomfortable because we know it's going to bring us something different. And so it took her a moment, but she naturally leaned into, I'm going to expand now. And then when she expanded, she realized, my plate is really full. I'm overwhelmed. I am double booked. I've got so much going on. Everybody needs me. Like every minute of every day, there was a text message, a phone call. People needed a decision. They needed an answer. And she just didn't have the capacity to respond to everybody. And there was the overwhelmed feeling of compounded, not only am I overwhelmed, I'm not going to get to do what I need to do. And then I'm going to be assured to fail. And so that fear crept back in again. But in leadership, you need to understand that every time your plate is full, you don't need another plate. You need to expand the plate that you have, and you expand your capacity to do more. And the only reason that you have a full plate right now is because you are in the process of becoming proficient at what you're doing. And the minute you get really good at that, you can create efficiencies in what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you realize there's a whole outer room and you're supposed to lean into that and then fill that and then lean into that and fill that. And so many people say, oh, I'm stressed and overwhelmed and I want to be promoted so I can get to the next level. So I have people doing things for me. And I remind them, like, dude, you're a manager. And, when you go in to become a director or you're going in to become an associate vice president, you're going to become a president. But, every time your plate just gets bigger, like you just get more. You realize it doesn't ever get less. It's only ever going to grow. And that conversation always leaves people that look on their faces of like, holy smokes, I never really thought about that. It is about being comfortable in that expansion period and then choosing how are you going to react? How are you going to respond? And then how do you want to show up to that moment so that you're present to that expansion process? Because I remind you, what came for Anniston was an asking, I want to impact more. And then she was given an opportunity to impact more.
I feel like there is a period of time, well, let's just call it a grace period. I was even using that terminology with Rudi after I had accepted this position and saying, I need to give myself some grace. This is a grace period of adjustment. I need to adjust my own energy and adjust my ability to manage more on the plate. And it can become a bit of a vicious cycle if you don't really take it seriously. Because as Rudi said, a lot of people say, I'm so stressed, I'm so busy, I'm overwhelmed now. I went from being able to handle my plate to completely feeling like I'm overloaded and can't. So what does that stress and anxiety do? Well, it takes your ability away for critical thinking. It takes your ability away for intuitive answers and solutions to creating efficiencies. And this was a big aha moment for me, because there was a good week or two there that I was every day, I would wake up and say, okay, I need to do my priming. But then I thought, but I have a mountain of emails to get to. I'm just going to get started and I'll get to my meditation later. And then I would find myself strung out, stressed out, totally anxiety ridden by the end of the day, feeling like I hadn't gotten anything done. And after 2 weeks of doing that, I said, I can't live like this. Like, this is too much. Something's got to shift. The workload is not going to shift, nor should I put that on there. And my team and their needs shouldn't have to shift, because I'm their leader and it's my job to support them and doing their jobs and guide them. So who needs to shift? It's me. And the way to do that is, okay, how can I feel less? How can I start to manage my stress and anxiety better? Because when I manage my stress and anxiety better, I'm going to be able to receive ideas of how to streamline, receive ideas for how to guide this company in a more profitable, successful, direction. But if I don't get a hold of myself, not only am I going to be miserable, my health is going to suffer, my marriage is going to suffer, my sleep is going to suffer, but also the business is going to suffer. And then I might potentially lose this job, right? So really the most important thing that I did, and I would urge any of you who can relate to this story, or maybe even find yourself in this situation, is to really lean more heavily in to my morning routine. It became an absolute non-negotiable. I went from doing 25-minute meditations every morning to doing hour-long meditations every single morning. I was getting up at like 4:30, so 4:30 to 5:30, meditating. I wouldn't leave that chair until I felt at peace, balanced, and inspired and excited for the day. Then I would get out my journal and I would start to write out my gratitude list. And then I would write out, okay, what do I want this day to be? What are my intentions? What's the outcome I want from this meeting? What's the outcome I want from this project that we're working on? And ultimately, how do I want to feel at the very end of the day? I would make sure to not only write it down, but then I would feel it. I would feel it rushing through my body, this feeling of sitting, outside by the fire with Rudi and telling him what an incredible day it was and how exciting it was and how many great ideas came from the team and myself and how we're collaborating and how much fun it is. And then I would move forward. And I'm telling you, it was such a shift for me. It was such a dramatic shift in my experience that I feel like I effectively shortened the adjustment period that happens when you experience rapid elevation and change.
So there's a step that comes after this, and that is in how do you organize your day and create a routine and a structure. And we actually cover this episode 70. I think it's episode 70. So go back on how to set yourself up for success. And so once you've done your morning priming, once you've meditated, you've journaled, you've planned and envisioned what your day is going to look like and feel like, now you need to plan what are you going to physically do and manage the tasks that you have in your day. And that is how you effectively expand. And so I don't want to repeat that. Just go back and catch that episode if you haven't yet done it. But there's one piece I want to touch on as we bring this episode to a close, and that is if you are the observer of somebody going through the process. Anniston spoke into, she gave herself grace. Well, if your partner is going through this, you have to give your partner some grace. For the whole month of January, Anniston was in her head. We are two people attached at the hip. We talk all day long. We have intimate, meaningful conversations in every moment. And for the month of January, my wife was like missing somewhere. She was in a void. And so if I was home, which wasn't a lot, she would just be passing past me like two ships in the night, except we were in the same room. And I would say, hey, how are you doing? And she'd be like, what? And I would know she's so lost and deep in thought. And, for most couples, they will internalize that. Oh, well, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong in the marriage. And I just knew she's going through a lot. Let's give her the space. And you know what? It took her 4 weeks, and then she came out of it, and she's now back to being the way that she was before, because she's now settled into what is her new role. And so as you hear these words, I want you to start asking yourself, where are you in this pendulum swing? And where can you find the grace in the moment of where you're at? And if somebody's going through it, can you give them the space? And more importantly, if you're in it, can you give yourself the space? We love you guys so much. We know that life sometimes can feel really hard. But when you shift how you view the world around you is going to change. And you are the creator of the experience that you're living. And life gets to be beautiful and it gets to be magical. And you get to create the life that you want to live. And all of that starts and stops with what do you put into the thoughts about what you're experiencing. and then you carefully, intentionally plan how do you want to meet what is coming to you. We do. We really do. We love you so very much. Please feel free to rate, review, share this podcast with anybody who could benefit from this message. And we appreciate you for joining us. We'll catch you in the next episode of the Empowered Life Podcast.